Scratch building from a photograph. This is the shop of my friend who does all my backdrop printing, and I thought it would be nice to have a model of his shop on my layout, and I found this photo on Google Maps, so the credit goes to Google Maps for the photo. But the problem is the photograph is quite a bit larger than HO scale. So now I am going to show you how to convert a measurement from a photograph down to HO scale. I know that this door is 6'6" in height. I'll have to convert that to metric. Well, I've converted the 6'5" to metric, which equals out to 1.98 meters or 198 centimeters, which is so close we can work it on 2 meters. Right, so now we have a known height, and if we measure the door on the picture, we see that the door on the picture measures out to 35 millimeters. Once we have got that measurement of the door height, 35 millimeters, we can put that equal to 2 meters in real life. So we have got a ratio between 35 millimeters and 2 meters that we can use to scale this building down to see what size the door would be in HO scale, and from there we can work to the rest of the building. Work out how far it is between the wall and the door, between the door and the windows, how high the building is, how wide the building is, all using that ratio. To make the conversion of the ratio easier, I convert the 2 meters to 2000 millimeters, which is the same length, just a different unit, and that is still equal to 35 millimeters on the picture. So we need to divide 2000 by 35 to get a ratio that we can multiply all the specifics with to get the sizes. So let's do that to get the ratio. 2000 divided by 35, and we see it brings up 57.142. Can actually round it off to 57.143. So then I'm going to clear, and we try 35 times 57.143 and 2000.005, which is very close, and that is still not HO scale. HO scale is 87 times smaller than real life. So what we need to do is to divide that by 87, and that will be the measurement 22.998, so we can say 23 millimeters for the door height. So I have just drawn a very rough plan of the front of the building, showing the door, the front window and the top window. And now we have already determined one measurement, so I'm going to write that in as 23 millimeters for the height. Let's now determine the width of the door. According to a rough measurement, it looks like it is 20 millimeters across. So let us key that in on the calculator. 20 times 57.143 is 1.14 meters, which door is quite narrow. It's 2 doors side by side, and so let's make that HO scale divided by 87. 13.1 millimeters, 13.13 millimeters is the width of the door. So let us write that in on the building plan. So at least now we have 2 measurements complete, and we can continue to measure the rest of the building. I will not bore you with all the math. I have shown the process, so you can use this on any picture that is reasonably square on and determine the measurement if you have one known measurement. There I have all the measurements transferred. The next step is to transfer that to a piece of cardstock and get the correct measurements. So there we have the building front transferred from the measurements on the paper. Next step is to cut the cardstock and cut out the window openings, the door opening, and you'll notice I've added a little space on top for an aircon unit that is not visible, but it is sitting right there behind that little Fat Boy advert. So the aircon unit I know is there from personal experience, having been in the shop many a times. Cutting is not a difficult job, but you need to be careful, and many light cuts work wonders instead of trying to force it through with one heavy cut. So I'm just using a hobby knife or one of these with the snap-off blades, which is quite heavy. Let me just see that my line is lined up nicely to the ruler, little steel ruler, and then I start by making many light cuts until I have eventually cut right through the cardstock that I'm using for this specific build. This cardstock will also then eventually be covered with brick paper, and the holes for the windows and door be cut out in the brick paper as well, and the roof will also be cardstock covered with paper that has got the tile print on it. The first cut done. Next one is to cut the height and thereafter the right hand side. Again using many light cuts. Until it has eventually cut through this cardstock, because this is quite a thick cardstock, as you can see. And there is the building starting to take shape as a rectangle. Then the next cutouts I might change to a chisel blade to cut out the door and window. Using the chisel blades to cut out the window and door shapes. Make sure that you position it right in the corner and gently bring it down. Keep the pressure on it and move to the next piece. And then I have got a slightly larger chisel blade to help with the lengthwise cuts. Just make sure it's the right side in. And keep following the line. This is also a process that needs to be done slowly and carefully to make sure that the cuts are straight, otherwise you will have some very uneven shapes and the windows might not fit very well. And I will not bore you with chiseling out door and window shapes, so I'll stop the video and continue once this has been cut out completely. The first cutout done, only 2 more to go. The second hole cut out, and please note these little cutouts are not being thrown away, they will be used later when it comes to building the stairs. And eventually all the cutouts have been made. Next step is to cover it with the brick paper. Covering the building with the brick paper also has a few recommended practices or tricks up the sleeve. As you're looking at the building, you're looking at the front. As you can see from that, the door on the left, the window on the right, and then another window on top. So the brick paper needs to reflect that, and in order to make the cutouts on the brick paper, I need to mark it on the rear of the brick paper. So what I do is I take the brick paper, lay it face down, I take my building front, flip it over and lie it down on the paper, and then I can cut it out, but there's another thing or two that needs to happen before that. I'm just going to demonstrate with a small piece of brick paper. The bricks, if I can bring it closer to the camera, must run perfectly straight or square to the window and the floor and whatever. I've never seen bricks looking like that on a building, going up at an angle, although with some builders these days you never know. But in order to get a straight line, I will cut my brick paper so that there's a straight edge at the bottom, and then I can line up the straight edge on my building with the straight edge on the brick paper and flip it over, mark out, mark out, mark out, and very carefully cut. And there's also a special technique for cutting, or a special method for cutting. So as you can see, I've cut the brick paper square and straight, and that now gets lined up to the bottom square and straight of the building, and then it gets turned over. You make sure that it's all lying nice and square and flat. What I sometimes like to do for that, to make sure it's straight, is to take my ruler and just press everything up against it, and then I know now that bottom line is straight. With the bottom now being squared up and straight, I take my pencil and I lightly draw the outline of the building around all the three sides, and I draw the windows by simply tracing it on the inside. And also the door shape. And it's nice if you're ambidextrous. If you haven't got space with one hand, you just change to your other hand and you draw the shape in. And now if I remove my building, I have got a reverse basically of the building front, showing me where I must cut the openings so that the doors and windows fit across with the openings on the building itself. A very neat trick I learned while I started building paper buildings was, instead of cutting out that rectangle and making that fit exactly across the window opening, is to draw a X or a cross from corner to corner, very gently and lightly, and also from that corner to the opposing corner, and then to cut on those lines of the X so that you can fold those pieces of paper back and back and back and back through the window opening, that you do not need to worry about the window sills or the sides of the windows, etc. The brick paper covers that. And it is also recommended, once that is done, to score the line with the back of a knife, just to make it easy to fold straight on that line. Another neat trick I've learned over the years with scratch building is to fold those paper, can we say the window cutouts back. I will line up a steel ruler on that little score line, and then I will take either another thin steel ruler, or in this case I'm going to use my chisel blade, move it in underneath the paper and bring it back. And there you have a very straight fold, and we can do the same on the other side. Line it up with the score line, take the blade, press it against the ruler and fold it back. And so you can do the same with another steel ruler, move it in, or even a plastic ruler, and then fold it back. So let's see if this will fit our window, the top window. Looking through there, you can see the back. It is very, very tight. It fits nicely. And now I need to do the other two folds and then cut those the window and the door as well, and fold them back. And then we need to secure the paper to the cardstock and leave that to dry. And in the next video I will be showing you how to scratch build / kit bash doors and windows to fit this specific location, and how to install them and how to finish the building. And there you can see the top window folded back. The back side, you can see the two pieces. They will be trimmed a bit later. And just to show that this works very well, if you look at the top, you can see that brick row is perfectly lined up with the window, and the bottom, as it folds over as well, you can see that line where the mortar is perfectly lined up with the window. And remember, I worked on the back end of the brick paper. I did not have a view of the front. I simply used the pieces that I traced out and cut across there. Difficult to see now. Just see if I turn this light. Yeah, there you can see the pieces that have been drawn in pencil, and I use them as guides to cut the cross and to fold back the paper.